Most weddings are built around a moment. The dress, the kiss, the photos, the first dance. But an Amish wedding is built around something else entirely. A community, a covenant, and a way of life that does not begin when the guests arrive, and does not end when the day is over. If you walked into one expecting romance in the modern sense, you might miss what is actually happening. Because an Amish wedding is not designed to put two individuals on display. It is designed to place them, carefully and publicly, inside an entire moral world. And once you understand that, every detail starts to make sense. When people imagine the Amish, they often picture black buggies, plain clothing, and farms that seem untouched by time. But a wedding reveals something deeper than aesthetics. It shows how the Amish understand adulthood, duty, family, faith, and belonging. It also shows why marriage, in many Amish communities, is not just a personal milestone. It is one of the clearest ways a person steps fully into the life of the church. That matters, because Amish weddings are often misunderstood. Outsiders tend to focus on what is missing. No bridal march. No flashy decorations. No elaborate venue. No dancing. Often no rings. No staged photography. No public spectacle. But that is only the surface. What an Amish wedding really offers is something many modern weddings only talk about. A day where hundreds of people do not simply watch a couple get married. They physically make the marriage possible. They cook. They build. They host. They clean. They witness. They bless. They absorb the new household into the life of the community. And the closer you look, the more remarkable it becomes. To understand the wedding, you have to start before the wedding day itself. In Amish life, marriage is closely tied to church membership and adult responsibility. In many communities, a young man and woman do not marry first and then grow into Amish adulthood. In a sense, it works the other way around. They are baptized into the church, commit themselves to the ordinum, the unwritten and district-specific rules that shape everyday life, and only then are they eligible to marry within the community. That sequence is important. Marriage is not treated as a purely private love story. It is bound to accountability, to discipline, to mutual obligation, to the church. And that is one reason Amish weddings feel so different from the modern Western version. The day is not meant to celebrate self-expression. It is meant to affirm continuity. The Amish are also not one identical group. Customs vary from settlement to settlement, and even from church district to church district. Lancaster County traditions may differ from Holmes County or from Swiss Amish communities in Indiana. Some details change over time. Some communities have adapted certain practices. A few now hold weddings in more seasons of the year than they once did. Some may permit limited forms of travel after the wedding. Some vary in dress colors or guest arrangements. But across those differences, the deeper pattern remains strikingly consistent. Marriage is plain, serious, communal, and deeply woven into Amish religious life. And that is where the story really begins. Courtship in Amish communities is often quieter and more private than outsiders expect. Popular culture sometimes treats Amish romance like a mystery, but the reality is less theatrical and more structured. Young people usually begin socializing in their later teens. Sunday evening singings, gatherings with peers, buggy rides, and community events can all become part of the social world where relationships begin to form. It is not that romance is absent. It is that it unfolds inside a culture that values restraint, privacy, and modesty over public display. So when a couple decides they intend to marry, the engagement is often kept relatively secret for a time. That surprises many people. In the modern world, engagement is usually a performance almost as much as a promise. It is announced instantly. It spreads online in minutes. It comes with photos, captions, and congratulations from hundreds of people who may never meet the couple in person. In Amish life, the movement is almost the reverse. A couple may know their intentions well before the wider community does. There is no diamond ring held up for admiration. In some communities, the groom may give a practical gift instead, like a clock or household item. The relationship becomes public not through social media, but through the church. This moment is often called being published. That word sounds strange to modern ears, but it captures something essential. The relationship is not made real by display. It is made public through communal acknowledgement. The announcement typically comes only shortly before the wedding. In some Lancaster traditions, couples are published after autumn communion, and once that announcement happens, the pace becomes intense. What had been quiet becomes a rush of preparation. And this is where things begin to change. Once the engagement is made known, the wedding is suddenly close. Very close. There may be only a matter of days or a couple of weeks before the ceremony. That compressed timeline feels almost unimaginable today, in a culture where weddings are often planned a year or more in advance. But in Amish communities, the wedding is less about crafting a personalized event and more about preparing the household and mobilizing the people around it. The bride, her mother, sisters, relatives, and neighbors begin preparing food, clothing, linens, and space. The groom extends invitations and makes his own arrangements. Homes are reorganized. Benches and tables are prepared. In some cases, temporary structures or additional spaces are set up to handle the number of guests. And there can be a lot of guests. An Amish wedding is not usually intimate in the modern sense. Depending on the community, attendance can reach into the hundreds. 200 is common in many accounts. 400 is not unusual. In some traditions, 500 or even more may attend over the course of the day. The wedding is not a carefully limited guest list of closest people only. It is a community event because the couple is entering community life in a new way. Marriage creates a household, yes, but it also deepens the network of obligations between families, kin, neighbors, and church members. That is why the season matters too. Traditionally, many Amish weddings take place after harvest, especially in late fall and into early winter. In places like Lancaster County, wedding season has long been associated with the period after the most demanding farm labor is done. November is especially important in many accounts, and Tuesdays and Thursdays are often named as the classic wedding days. Those choices were practical. Farm life runs on labor, weather, livestock, and rhythm. A wedding must fit into that world, not disrupt it. But even here, reality is a little more flexible than stereotype. Some communities, especially larger or changing ones, have spread weddings across more of the year. Practical considerations matter. More couples, different work patterns, shifts in what communities allow. So while the old image of post-harvest Tuesday and Thursday weddings remains very real, it is not an iron law everywhere. That nuance matters because it tells us something bigger about the Amish. They are traditional, but not frozen. Their customs can adapt without surrendering their basic values. And that becomes especially clear when you look at the wedding itself. One of the most revealing things about an Amish wedding is where it happens. Not usually in a decorated venue. Not in a hotel ballroom. Not under theatrical lighting. Often, it takes place at the bride's family home. To outsiders, that can sound almost impossibly simple. But for the Amish, it is perfectly logical. Many Amish do not build church buildings in the way outsiders expect. Worship itself may rotate through homes. So the home is not merely private space. It is already part of religious and communal life. Holding a wedding there does not feel improvised. It feels consistent. The bride's house becomes, for that day, a place of worship, hospitality, and transition. Before sunrise, the day is already moving. This is one of those details that says everything about Amish life. A wedding day does not cancel ordinary responsibility. The cows still need milking. Chores still need doing. Fires need tending. Breakfast needs making. While a modern wedding often suspends reality for the sake of the event, an Amish wedding begins inside reality. The event does not replace life. It emerges from it. That image alone is powerful. Somewhere in the dark morning, before guests arrive, before vows are spoken, a household is already at work. There is practical labor in the middle of sacred anticipation. In a strange way, that may be one of the most honest wedding images there is. And yet, what most people remember first is the clothing. Because yes, the bride does not usually look like the bride most viewers imagine. There is no shimmering white designer gown sweeping across polished floors. No lace train. No dramatic veil. No bouquet carried for the camera. In many Amish communities, the wedding dress is plain, modest, handmade, and often not white at all. Blue has long been associated with Amish bridal wear in many popular accounts, especially in Lancaster traditions. But that is not universal. Some communities use shades of purple. Some allow burgundy, green, or other acceptable colors. Some Swiss Amish traditions differ even more. In certain communities, brides may wear black with white elements. What matters is not a universal color code. What matters is plainness, modesty, and conformity to the expectations of that specific church community. That point is easy to miss. The dress is not meant to make the bride stand apart as a unique visual centerpiece. It is meant to fit within a moral grammar. It is new, significant, and often beautiful in its own restrained way, but its beauty comes from order rather than ornament. In many traditions, the bride either makes her own dress or has it made by family or another woman in the community. The dress may later be worn again, sometimes as church clothing, and in some communities it carries lifelong significance. Even the accessories follow this same logic. Prayer coverings, capes, aprons, dark shoes, plain fabrics. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is designed to attract the gaze in the modern performative sense. The groom is equally restrained. Black suit, plain coat, white shirt, dark shoes. In some traditions, a bow tie appears on the wedding day even though it is not part of everyday dress. And after marriage, one outward marker becomes especially important. In many Amish communities, a man begins wearing a beard after he marries. That beard, more than a ring, can become the visible sign of married status. And that leads to one of the most fascinating absences in the whole ceremony. Often, there are no wedding rings. To many outsiders, that sounds almost impossible. The ring is such a central symbol in modern marriage that its absence can feel like a missing limb. But in Amish life, the symbolism is redirected. If the broader culture emphasizes the token, the Amish emphasize the life that follows. The marriage is not authenticated by jewelry. It is authenticated by vows, church recognition, household formation, and the visible assumption of married roles. No ring, no kiss at the altar, usually no flowers, no elaborate decor. Traditionally, no photography. At first glance, these may look like restrictions. But inside the Amish worldview, they function differently. They prevent the day from becoming a spectacle of vanity or memory-making for public consumption. The purpose is not to create a perfect image. It is to make a real covenant. But that was only part of the story. Because the ceremony itself is far longer, quieter, and more demanding than many people expect. By morning, guests have arrived in large numbers. Benches are arranged. People are seated. The house is transformed into a gathering space. Depending on the community, the service may begin around 8:30 or 9 in the morning. And then, unlike the compact modern ceremony that might last 20 minutes, the Amish wedding service can stretch for hours. 3 hours. 4 hours. Sometimes more. There is congregational singing, usually unaccompanied. There are sermons. There is prayer. There is scripture. There is counsel directed toward the couple. At times, the bride and groom may step away for instruction from a minister while the congregation continues singing. The service is not rushed toward the big moment. In fact, from a modern perspective, the big moment is almost hidden inside the larger religious act. That is exactly the point. The wedding vows are not isolated as a dramatic climax. They are embedded in worship. The couple is not center stage in the modern theatrical sense. They are the subject of the day, but they are also part of a religious order larger than themselves. The ministers preside. Fathers or other ordained men may offer testimony. The congregation witnesses not as spectators but as members of a moral community that will continue to shape the couple's life after the wedding. This is why describing an Amish wedding as simple can sometimes be misleading. It is plain, yes, but plain is not the same as shallow. In many ways, the ceremony is dense with meaning. Its seriousness comes from repetition, discipline, and continuity. The very length of the service tells you something. Marriage is not being treated as a fleeting emotional high. It is being placed inside a durable structure of obedience, endurance, and faithfulness. And then, after the service ends, something else takes over. Food. Not as luxury. Not as curated experience. Not as branding. food as labor, abundance, and community. This is one of the most vivid parts of an Amish wedding day. While the service is underway, preparations continue behind the scenes. Then after the ceremony, the home shifts into a vast meal operation. Men may set up tables. Women move quickly through the kitchen. Guests are often fed in shifts because there are simply too many people to seat at once. The bridal party and immediate family may eat first, while others wait their turn. And the meal itself is famously substantial. Chicken, filling or stuffing, mashed potatoes, gravy, creamed celery in some traditions, slaw, bread, butter, preserves, canned fruit, pies, donuts, puddings, cookies, sometimes ham, sometimes sweet potatoes, sometimes cold dishes for the evening meal. The exact menu varies, but the principle remains the same. This is generous, practical, labor-intensive food prepared at scale. That detail matters more than it seems. An Amish wedding feast is not just a reception meal. It is a display of collective capacity. Hundreds of people can be fed because hundreds of people contribute. Women gather before the wedding to cook and organize. Portable stoves or cooking tents may be used when needed. Dishes, tables, linens, benches, serving order, cleanup, leftovers, guest flow, all of it requires coordination. The wedding meal is a community in motion. And in that sense, the meal may be as revealing as the vows. Because what is being celebrated is not individual consumption. It is mutual dependence. What makes this even more interesting is what happens after people eat. A modern wedding reception usually builds toward entertainment. Dancing, music, speeches, lighting cues, a DJ, a first dance, another dance, a bouquet toss, a planned sequence of moments designed to keep energy high and memories marketable. An Amish wedding moves differently. The afternoon may be filled with conversation, hymns, visiting, games, and socializing. Young people mingle. Older relatives reconnect. In some communities, volleyball or outdoor games appear. In some traditions, the bride and groom may hand out candy or favors to guests. Gifts may be opened later. Matchmaking energy can surface quietly in the background as unmarried young people observe one another in one of the year's most socially important gatherings. And this is where the day becomes almost anthropological in the best sense. A wedding is not just a union. It is one of the key moments when the whole social body sees itself. Kinship lines are renewed. Friendships are reaffirmed. Generations mix. Community memory deepens. The couple matters, but the event also reflects the ongoing life of the group. That is why even the end of the day does not function like the ending of a modern wedding. There is usually no dramatic getaway under sparklers. No limousine. No choreographed send-off. No rush to an airport honeymoon suite. In many traditional accounts, the couple spends the first night at the bride's parents' home. The next day may involve helping clean up. In some communities, friends play practical jokes, moving furniture, hiding equipment, teasing the newlyweds in harmless ways, or serenading them. These details feel earthy and communal rather than glamorous. Marriage begins not in escape from the community, but under its watchful affection. And then comes one of the strangest and most beautiful parts of the whole tradition. The honeymoon may not be a private trip away at all. In many older Amish patterns, the newlyweds spend weeks or weekends visiting relatives and receiving gifts as they go. Instead of disappearing into seclusion, they travel through a web of kinship. They eat meals with family, stay overnight, gather household items, build relational ties. In some cases, they may live with one set of parents until they can establish their own home. Think about what that means. In mainstream culture, marriage is often imagined as two people leaving everyone else behind to create a private world. In Amish life, marriage still forms a new household, but it does so through intensified embeddedness. The couple is not severed from family networks. They are woven more tightly into them. That difference changes everything. It changes the emotional tone of the wedding. It changes the meaning of gifts. It changes the role of parents. It changes the symbolism of the first weeks of marriage. It even changes what privacy means. The Amish value family intimacy, but they do not treat independence as the highest good. Dependence, rightly ordered, is not seen as weakness. It is part of belonging. Of course, not every Amish wedding today looks exactly like the most traditional accounts. Some communities invite more non-Amish guests than others. Some practices around honeymoon travel have loosened in certain places. Some settlements have shifted wedding dates because of practical realities. Some details outsiders repeat confidently turn out to be local rather than universal. That is worth emphasizing because Amish life is often flattened into myth. People talk about the Amish as if every district were identical, every custom fixed, every family the same. But the Amish themselves live with variation shaped by region, affiliation, church leadership, and local ordnung. So if we ask what an Amish wedding is really like, the most honest answer is not a single snapshot. It is a pattern of privacy before publicity, of humble clothing over visual display, of vows inside worship rather than performance, of community labor over hired luxury, of practical abundance over spectacle, of marriage as incorporation, not just romance. And maybe that is why Amish weddings continue to fascinate outsiders. Not simply because they are old-fashioned, but because they reveal an alternative logic. They ask different questions. Not, how can this day express our personal style? But, how does this day honor God, family, and community? Not, how can we make this unforgettable for the audience? But, how do we begin a faithful household? Not, how do we create a perfect image? But, how do we enter a covenant that will endure when the image is gone? That does not make Amish weddings morally superior to every other kind of wedding. Romanticizing them would be just as shallow as mocking them. Amish life carries its own tensions, pressures, and limitations. Gender roles are often traditional. Individual choice is shaped by communal expectation. Privacy can protect what is sacred, but it can also make Amish life easy for outsiders to misunderstand. Respect means resisting both sneering and sentimental fantasy. Still, there is something undeniably powerful in the way an Amish wedding refuses the habits of modern spectacle. It reminds us that a wedding can be more than a performance of happiness. It can be a public act of joining a life already defined by work, limits, duty, kinship, and faith. And perhaps that is the quiet secret at the center of the whole thing. An Amish wedding feels so different not because it is obsessed with the past, but because it is trying to protect a future. The future of a household. The future of a church district. The future of a way of life that depends on people accepting limits, honoring roles, raising children, sharing labor, and staying within a community that asks more from marriage than romantic fulfillment alone. Seen that way, the plain dress, the long sermon, the crowded tables, the absence of rings, the early chores, the homemade meal, the overnight family visits, all of it stops looking quaint. It starts looking coherent. Every piece belongs to the same vision. So what is an Amish wedding really like? It is quiet, but not empty. Simple, but not small. Private, but never solitary. It is a wedding where the most important thing is not the image that survives the day, but the life that begins after it. A life that, in Amish understanding, is meant to be steady, useful, disciplined, and rooted in something larger than the couple themselves. And maybe that is why people remain so curious about it. Because beneath the plain clothes and horse-drawn buggies is a question that reaches far beyond the Amish world. What if marriage is not mainly about being seen? What if it is about being bound, supported, and changed by a community that expects love to become a form of work, faith, and endurance? That question is not simple. But Amish weddings answer it in a way few modern ceremonies ever try to. If you enjoyed this documentary, leave a like and subscribe for more thoughtful deep dives into hidden traditions, everyday rituals, and the worlds most people pass by without ever really seeing. And if there is another community, custom, or way of life you want us to explore next, let us know in the comments.